bourgeois parlance, and it doesn't get into my, I can't understand it. You see, I can't differentiate between mainstream writing and side stream writing. The writing are writing, and there cannot be any line of demarcation between the writings. This is first degree writing, this is second degree writing, this is primary writing, and this is secondary writing. This is mainstream writing, this is the side stream writing. I don't understand it, and I don't agree to this concept. The only thing I want to say is that there may be a mainstream writing here, but there is an international mainstream. And that international mainstream of literature is more important than the mainstream that we have been talking about here for the last hour and a half. And to me, in the international mainstream, writers from Latin America, from India and Pakistan, from South Africa, from Palestine, from South Korea, they are more important than the problem of mainstream writers in Canada, in America, or elsewhere. So I have a sense of pride, and I really feel very, very proud of this, that I write in Punjabi, because Punjabi writing basically is a committed writing. A writing committed in the sense that it is committed with the people, a commitment with the people. It's not a literature just for the sake of literature. It's a literature for the people who are suffering, people who are being hanged, people who are being incarcerated ruthlessly, people who are being flogged, writers and intellectuals and journalists who are being flogged in my country, and the cultural infiltration and the cultural and other imperialism, the vestiges of which is making our life hell in the third world. So what we write in Punjabi, the word we write, is predominant in the international mainstream, and there we who, as I say, we who talk about South Africa, we who talk about Palestine, we who talk about cultural genocide, we who talk about the sufferings of the people, we are in the mainstream, and maybe our friends in the West, in America, in the Canadians, they are in the side stream. They are not in the mainstream. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, now Dr. Zaman. He has definitely extended the meaning of our mainstream writing from national to international dimensions. I think that was wonderful idea. Definitely added a new meaning. Thank you again. If anybody else would like to send it, you like it?
Yeah, I have a general question. It's a short question. And a question for our Canadian English writers. As Surjit elaborated about Canadian Punjabi literature, we would like to hear something about Canadian English literature, for which we have been using the term mainstream literature so far, and all of a sudden the meaning seems to have changed. We would like to know who are the Canadian English writers, where are they living, residing, what are they writing, what are the main themes in their writing, and then we will be in a position to decide based on Fakhr's comments what is mainstream and what is side split? It's a general question to
Well, I think it's a very, very extensive kind of question. But if Calvin, very kindly, he's from Putin School of Writing, very well versed with that type of stuff. If you very briefly can.
That's a big question to answer. It's hard to answer it briefly.
Cal?
I didn't come prepared to give a speech, and that would sort of I think that's a really huge question to answer. But I think in the context of the man who spoke just a few moments ago, that I agree with him. I've always wondered where this term mainstream writing comes from, because I think that the writers that I've met in the Punjabi community have the same problems that the writers I know in the non-Punjabi community, and that is finding an audience. And I was at a reading last night, and I looked around and I saw there were 40 people there, and I knew pretty well every one of those people. And it's always, there's about 50 or 60 people, and they're sort of interchangeable. They go to all the different readings. And when from what I've heard, when you people have your readings that you do in Punjabi and your plays and stuff, you get out way more people than most people writing in English can bring to a reading in this country. So I think in a lot of ways we could learn some things from you about building a community of an audience and building a community of readers. I'm not trying to sidestep your question, because I understand. I think that the thing about mainstream is more of a kind of a political thing than a thing of audience and who's writing in the mainstream, because what's important or whatever. People writing in Punjabi or English or French or Ukrainian or whatever, everyone has Chinese. There's lots of important things to say and lots of ways to say it. I think that I can't answer really your question like who are the mainstream writers, because if I gave you a list of who I think are the mainstream writers, someone else could say, well, no, they're not the mainstream writers. And I think that right now writing has a real image problem. And I can give you an example of something that happened to us at the Kootenai School of Writing. We applied for an interdisciplinary grant with the Canada Council. It was a one-time only thing. And we were trying to do a cross between visual art and writing. And the person who was from the Canada Council, who was sort of our advocate, came and told us that, he said, well, frankly, there were other projects too, like dance and visual arts and music and visual art and that sort of thing. And he said, well, your project isn't going to go ahead because, frankly, writing isn't sexy. Oh.
So I think we all sort of face the same kind of problem right now, that that writing isn't sexy, because you don't do it in front of a bunch of people, you know, in a spandex tight suit and with spangles and lots of lights shining on you. You do it at home. And the thing about reaching an audience is a tough question. And I think that the suggestion of doing a magazine is a good suggestion as any. And I know a little bit about getting that sort of stuff together, so I'd be willing to, if people do have the energy to work on that, I'd be willing to put a little bit of work into something like that. I don't think that, I think that you were correct about that whole idea of mainstream and non-mainstream. I think that that's sort of like we could go on debating that forever and just waste a lot of energy on that instead of just getting on with the business of writing and putting the writing out there where people can read it, which is the most important thing. That's all. Thank you very much, Calvin. That was a nice answer to a great question. Calvin is, as he mentioned, from Putin School of Writing. and it's associated with work poetry. In fact, I think 3 or 4 years ago, Calvin's, one of his poems, work poems, appeared on the front page of Globe and Mail. I think that's the only poem they ever put on the front page, if I'm not wrong. So, I think if Professor O'Brien wants to say something, share his views on this, we're just coming to close, or Dr. Sharma.
I'll just speak very briefly. I really don't have any credentials to be speaking at this meeting because I've just arrived in Vancouver about 10 days ago. But I'll briefly make a few comments which I think are pertinent to this conference. I've come here to take up a position at the UBC to teach Punjabi language and Sikh studies. It's, as far as I'm aware, the first position of its kind outside India. So there's always a cost in being a pioneer, and I hope that in the months and years ahead, something solid in that direction can be established. Before coming to Canada, I wasn't aware that there is this very rich tradition of creative writing in Punjabi alive in Canada. So this confuses me a great deal, that there is so much going on here, and I'm honored to be a part of it from now onwards. And earlier on there was a talk about reaching a wider audience, and I think at the university we will be able to provide a forum in the coming years where poets, writers, playwriters can come and speak to a larger body of students, not only students speaking Punjabi, but also other students interested in the process of creative writing. So I'll be most pleased to be associated with any such movement towards reaching the university audience, which I think would be a very worthwhile effort. I think another point I would like to make, coming to Australia, which also is hailed as a similar society. Australia is also very proud of being a multicultural society, and there are similar labels used there about mainstream literature, peripheral literature, and so on. As an earlier speaker pointed out, these terms are heavily loaded, and one has to be fairly careful in using them, just as mainstream can sometimes become a derogatory term, I think, in relation to people who are writing outside it. Similarly, the term ethnic has, I think, a very loaded value to it, and something has to be done with that term in terms of the literature of the people who belong to Canada. I think it shouldn't be categorized as ethnic. For me personally, it carries kind of derogatory value built into it. So if we start from that as a foundation step, that this is ethnic, so by itself, by its virtue, it's not worth whatever is non-ethnic, I think we're rolling the ball in the wrong court. These are just some brief observations I had, and as I said earlier, I really have no other credentials to speak at this moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor O'Brien, for giving us the brief introduction. Now, I think we are about to close. I would request if Dr. Hari Sharma would like to say a few things. Hari Sharma, Hari is essentially a Hindi writer. He has published a book in Hindi and is translated into Bengali also and other languages.
Punjabi too.
Punjabi too, of course. And but he hasn't learned how to speak yet. Well, anyway, Hari is also with Simon Fraser University, professor in sociology department. Hari?
Well, at least I have learned a little bit to speak Punjabi. I haven't learned at all how to read or write Punjabi. And it is really shameful, particularly after listening to you, Johnston, today. I just want to make one or two very brief comments, and I hope not to be misunderstood in any manner of trying to patronize. I genuinely feel very happy to be participating in this conference. I really want to congratulate the Punjabi Writers Forum for setting up this gathering, this meeting, this effort. I think a very significant step has been taken. Never mind the mainstream, the marginality, the peripheral, etc. But the fact remains that there is a very distinct cultural experience of being in Canada and yet retaining or trying to retain a certain cultural heritage from a faraway land. That crucial, no Punjabi in Punjab could possibly write about how a Punjabi in Canada would write. No perfectly assimilated Punjabi into English society would ever be able to write what this generation of Punjabis who are going through this transition, who are living in two cultures, who are living in two identities will write. That literature is a very important part of world's literary body. It should not be taken as lightly as a marginal thing. I think in this epoch, particularly in this post-Second World War generation, where literally 20 million or more people of the world are refugees, where millions of people have migrated from their homelands and living in other countries. I just happened to come for a brief visit from Thailand, and I was surprised there was a little Punjabi town there, a little China town there. There isn't a place in the world where we cannot go and see this enormous mix of people from various backgrounds and trying to become part of the so-called mainstream. What I would like to suggest is that, and that's very briefly to conclude, as our friend from the Chinese community, Jim, what's his name?
Jim Wong.
Yeah. He said, a time might come in 3 generations, in 4 generations, where there may not in fact be any Punjabi writing being done in Canada. That would be sad. I'm glad that even in the Chinese community, literature is being written in Chinese. It would be a great loss for literature, not just Punjabi literature, for literature, if Canadian Punjabis stop writing in Punjabi and try only to get into the so-called mainstream, so to say. Some people among us are already doing it. Some people should do it a bit more. I think there's a need for greater, for the larger society. For example, I would like to be able to read what is coming in Punjabi without having to learn to read Punjabi. And it's not just Punjabi. I like to be able to read what is being written in Malayalam without having to read Malayalam language, or Bengali without having to read. So there is a need for continuous translation. Nobody can ever learn all the languages. I think some of us will have to take up this task more seriously of translating, probably producing a magazine on an ongoing basis, Punjabi writing in translation. But let us continue to do what we have been doing, and doing quite adequately, quite satisfactorily. We could be very happy about it. Writing our experiences in our language as much as we can, more effectively if we can, and let's do it. And I'm very happy to be here, and congratulations once again for this date.
We also have Beth Jankola here. She's a poet, and she has published quite a few books of poetry, and she's also a graphic artist. She has her own little studio called Studio B, where she has regular poetry readings and stuff like that. Beth, if you like to say a word or two.
I'd just like to say that I'm honored to be here. I'm a Canadian, and I write in Canadian, and I write poems. And NAVTEP published one of my books. Sergi and Ashmir invited me to events in their literary events where I heard different languages. It was always an honor to be there. I went to there was some street performers they had in a big theater in Westminster, and I went, and the whole thing was in Punjabi, and I swear I knew this whole story that was happening on the stage. And I would just like to say that Canada is a big country, but there's not that many people, and it's very difficult in this country for anyone who is a serious writer and is not one of the so-called, what I call, top 10. There are many, many, many others of us that are contributing to the culture of this country. You may not hear about it on the media, or we may not be the ones that get the grants from Canada Council, but we are here and we are alive and well. And I would like to invite any of you that wish to come to my studio on Tuesday night, because Navtad is going to read and sing his songs, I don't know in what language, and 3 beautiful women poets are going to read love poems. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Beth. I think we have had a really extremely interesting, very valuable session. I asked Greg, but he says it's all right.
David.
Huh? Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. David has been very much involved with people from, with Farm Workers Union and other people, and he has really contributed a lot. I think every one of us knows him. At the end, I would just say that all the scholars and writers who have accepted our invitation and found time from their very busy schedules, we are really grateful to them. They have enriched our conference, and we are really encouraged by their presence and their speeches and the very valuable contents of their speeches. It has been really a great, much more than what we expected from this meeting. And at the end, on behalf of Writers Forum, I thank you all. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.